Welcome back to the second half of Leading with Landscape. The morning sessions, the conversations and presentations provided an outstanding overview, as well as in some cases a deep dive into Toronto's unique urban morphology, its current planning challenges, and its opportunities. The morning sessions also set the stage for our two afternoon panels. The two panels are called Current Work and Toronto Lessons. They focus on the implications of leading with landscape, and in particular, on Toronto's unique contributions and innovations in the public realm of 21st century cities. So I will introduce the first panel. North American cities have experienced a double paradigm shift, economic and environmental, that distinguish this generation's challenges from preceding eras. Economically, the demands of globalism have set the stage for contemporary design practices to focus on strategic resource allocation rather than singular solutions in order to maximize a city's fiscal, spatial, and infrastructural assets. Environmentally, in the face of climate change and evolving demographics, current design approaches are multi-scalar and shaped to appeal to diverse populations. Of primary interest in this moment of shift is how acts of landscape architecture, planning, and urbanism propose, provide, promote, and protect a city's value. At the same time, these fields pry. They pry into what matters to us citizens of urbanized and urbanizing regions. They ask, what is possible? What is at risk? What do we want our lives to look, to feel, and to be like? It's through the sensibilities of designers that the engines of cultural and natural landscape is brought forward to allow the future city to emerge. The responsibility of answering these questions is borne out by the pocket parks, the playing fields, the dog and tot lots at the heart of each urban neighborhood, by the boldly Instagram-ready destination landscapes of the waterfront, by the subtle ecological infrastructures and the recreational corridors that stretch thousands of kilometers. And the sum, truly, of their cultural and environmental services is tremendous. So how do we bring out this value? In Toronto, as we heard eloquently discussed and questioned this morning, the city's distinctive evolution and highly charged planning arena place it at the forefront of urban innovation today. While the wrangling of complex policy, finance, governance, regulation, access, and management scenarios into a viable public sphere is faced too by peer cities such as Chicago, Seattle, New York, Boston, Montreal. From this complexity, a Toronto way appears to be emerging. In the manner that designers, planners, and economists refer in hindsight to Vancouverism, a loaded term, described in a 2014 Urban Land Institute article as a set of values-based development processes that are regionally specific yet globally adaptable. Perhaps the design modes now at play here may eventually codify into the recognizable Toronto way, for better or worse. Yet while Vancouverism uses access to open space and views as a means to the end of achieving enhanced density, it's the hope that Toronto sees landscape itself as the essential end goal, or I should say an essential end goal. So what does the Toronto way appear to be, at least for now, at this moment in time, in landscape terms? By focusing on a handful of work extracted from across the larger array of recent and ongoing public realm projects, and evident in the presentations you're about to see, several interrelated tendencies can be identified. First, a blend of internal and external, national, provincial, and global perspectives. In the conception and nurturing of a built landscape, there's always a delicate dance between the inductive force of what the community thinks it wants and the deductive process of a designer coming to know a site on the basis of its own material and social conditions. Design teams comprised of national or international plus local firms are common in high-profile placemaking, but we're talking about something different, the local essence at the neighborhood or district scale, meeting world-class experience, not simply within professional bounds of the design team, but perhaps more importantly, between the community itself, its people, animals, plants, soils, natural and cultural elements, and the designers tasked with interpretation and implementation. Numerous designers from the US, Europe, and other provinces have described their work in Toronto as being profoundly influenced by the elevated engagement of citizen designers, for better or worse, who help forge new levels of landscape literacy and expectation, much richer and perhaps even more fraught than the typical community input process. There's a sense that at least portions of Toronto's public realm have been or are being vigorously influenced by the community's sense of its own changing identity. As we all know, practicing self-awareness is difficult. Self-critique is even harder. And reaching any sort of consensus around identity in a diversifying city is close to impossible. Thus, creating frameworks for a neighborhood to see itself and its future candidly, not pure invention, is in the end the designer's provocation. Related to this is a second DNA strand woven throughout Toronto's evolving public sphere, the palpable quality of material expression. We might call this an inherent landscapiness. That is, as one observer of the city remarked, an enterprising and enduring appetite for tangibility. In Toronto, we clamber across immense rock outcrops. We cultivate urban habitat fragments. We stroll over surface topologies derived from geologic and hydrologic patterns. We have urban sand between our toes. Many factors merge to feed this thread, from sustainable and economical design protocols that call for using upcycled and native materials, to a boom in urbanite, industrial, post-industrial, and vernacular chic, to broad interests in heritage and conservation ethics. The built landscape is not just the result of, but a mirror of the city's regionality, its tactility. It's a reflection of the city upon itself, preventing it from forgetting its ecological, societal, and industrial ancestry. A set of images for the world to view, consider, and consume. And from revisioning, newly tangible experiences are produced in the contemporary landscape, portals into Toronto's soul. And finally, from this question of image and experience, we find in Toronto's emerging public landscape experiments to encourage rather than limit diverse program demands. Amidst quite evident concern over demographic and income stratification in the city's rapidly redeveloping zones, one might ask, who will be Toronto's public in 50 years? To the extent possible, current design work must create spaces and places that accommodate, entertain, educate, amuse, and protect this generation's populations, visitors, and environment, while at the same time anticipate future users' future needs. This, of course, is a challenge of most all designed landscapes, but in the tradition of legacy parks, it's usually solved by providing passive spaces, expanses of lawn, pavement and planting, seating and lighting that are flexible to a fault. These amenities are much needed, but they're not enough. In contrast, we can identify Theatre Square in Rotterdam, perhaps, opened nearly 20 years ago, as a precursor to some of the important experiments here today in what one might call exponential programming, or, as a panelist described to me, creation beyond sustainability. It is urban nature in relation to the very nature of the city, not escape, but destination, not anecdote, but amplification, not subordinate, but situational. In other words, wave decks, pink and yellow umbrellas, blue parks, reconstructed rivers, and refound ravines do not simply enhance Toronto, but actually instigate new ways of thinking, of moving, of communicating, and experiencing the urban condition. So with these thoughts in hand and head, let's proceed with our panelists' presentations. In this first panel, through the lens of projects designed by Claude Cormier Associes, Public Work Office for Urban Design and Landscape Architecture, and Michael Van Valkenburgh Associates, Toronto's 21st century landscape is explored. I welcome Claude of Claude Cormier Associes first, followed by Mark Ryan of Public Work, and last but certainly not least, Elizabeth Silver of NBVA.